Welcome to the PI Guy, tips, tricks, and advice for professional private investigators just like you. My name is John Morris. I am a licensed professional private investigator here in Colorado and in Wyoming. Do you conduct background checks as part of your PI business? Are you aware of the top 10 primary types of background checks that there are? In a minute, I'm going to tell you the secrets of these 10 types of background checks and what you need to watch out for while conducting background checks as a professional private investigator. First, go down below and hit that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. That really helps the channel out a lot. Now, I have had a lot of people inquire about my new book, Business Basics for Private Investigators, and when it's going to be released. I am anticipating to release it later this month or sometime in September, so keep an eye out for more information on that. It will be releasing on Amazon in print and in ebook and possibly audiobook as well. Number one on our list today is the universal background check. These are common backgrounds ran when an individual purchases a firearm from a licensed importer, a manufacturer, or a firearms dealer. While you as a PI may not run these directly, you may run across these in an investigation if you need to know if a witness, a defendant, a suspect, or some other person was in illegal possession of a firearm. Universal background checks are generally ran through the NICS, National Instant Background Check System. The NICS is overseen by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or better known as the ATF. However, the background checks themselves are actually conducted by the FBI. With universal background checks through the NICS, it is checking for certain types of criminal convictions, domestic violence convictions, active arrest warrants, fugitives of justice, and people in the country illegally, along with some other factors that may be considered important for someone purchasing a firearm. Now, you will probably never, as a private investigator, be running universal background checks or have access to NICS. However, you may run into situations where you need to verify data from an NICS background or see if someone has any history in their background that might preclude them from obtaining a firearm. Fingerprint background checks are used by most law enforcement agencies. The Automated Fingerprint Identification System, AFIS, was founded in 1999 and currently stores over 35 million fingerprint records. A fingerprint background is often used along with other types of background checks, such as pre-employment screening. Generally speaking, a fingerprint background is going to be required for almost every government job to include police officers or other law enforcement officers, firemen, airport employees, and hospitals, things like that. If you are a licensed private investigator, you probably had to have a fingerprint background conducted when you got your license. Many professional licenses require a fingerprint background check to be conducted. As a PI, you will probably never run a fingerprint background yourself, as these are usually ran by authorized government facilities such as the sheriff's office or an authorized fingerprint background business. But again, you may be hired to verify the data produced by a fingerprint background or to uncover what may come up on a person's record should someone have a fingerprint background conducted on them. Next, let's look at OIG, Office of the Inspector General background checks. These are mandated by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and include a list of excluded individuals and entities often referred to as the sanctions list, which prevents people who have committed crimes related to the healthcare industry from working within that industry. Many times an employer will run an OIG background check prior to hiring somebody, especially if they are health care industry related jobs. Here is top secret number one for the day, folks. You can run an OIG background check yourself for anyone for free. I'll put that link down below where you can run an OIG on yourself or anyone for that matter. And remember, it's free. Now really quick, go down below, click that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for me. Now with OIG background checks, you have to do a little investigative work yourself. In the OIG search, it just asks for the first name and the last name. From there, it gives you a list of potential matches to include sounds like names. For instance, if you put in John Morris, there is no John Morris, but a John Morrison might come up. In the list, you can click the Verify button for any of the subjects listed, and it will bring up another screen with other pertinent information such as date of birth, where and when they practiced, and a box where you can type in a social security number to verify if it is your person. So, to do this, you have to have your subject's social security number. International background checks are number 4 on our list of 10 background checks. These are something you may be hired to conduct from time to time, but these can get a little bit tricky to do. Usually people who need an international background check ran on someone is when they are hiring someone to fulfill an international position or someone who has been working internationally. International background checks can uncover information such as criminal records, education history, and employment verification. Now, I don't have to run these very often, but when I do, I have found that utilizing a professional background company, not these fly-by-night online sites, is the best way to go. I also go through my regular background check process when I do an international background check to include verifying all information provided, whether it is from the professional background company or any database I use or information I find. These verifications include phone calls to prior employers, landlords, police departments, courts, and other essential places to ensure the data is accurate. Now moving along to E-Verifiy background checks. These are conducted usually by employers to verify the identity as well as the employment eligibility for new hires. 22 states require an E-Verifiy be conducted for certain specific public and private employers. However, E-Verifiy is a voluntary background for most employers. I will leave a link down below where E-Verifiy backgrounds can be conducted by employers as well as by employees. Okay, we are halfway through our list of the top 10 types of background checks. Coming up in just a few minutes, I'm going to tell you what the biggest background checks are for professional private investigators to conduct and ones you might want to consider adding to your list of services. But first, go down, click that thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button. That really helps the PI Guide channel out a lot. Credit background checks come in at number 6 on our list of 10 background check types. A credit background is literally just that. It is a record of a person's credit information and gives a picture of how an individual has managed their credit as well certain bill payments in their life. Credit reports give insight to payment histories, tax liens, judgments, bankruptcies, bills and other debts in collection, recent credit inquiries, and other pieces of vital information. Credit reports are usually ran when someone is purchasing something of value, such as a car or a home through credit, or obtaining a credit card. Some employers require a credit report on certain types of employees prior to hiring them as well. Credit reports have many restrictions, especially when it comes to FCRA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which lays out specific requirements of how these can be ran. These regulations are very detailed. I will leave a link below to the FCRA PDF file for your perusal. As a rule, I generally do not run these due to the complications and the legalities involved. Rather, I usually refer people over to a professional background company that can educate the client in what can and cannot be conducted. Personal background checks or simple background checks people will have ran on themselves to see what potential employers, credit companies, places like that might get if they run a background check on them. There are hundreds of online sites that do these types of what I refer to as simple background checks. We do run more complex or comprehensive backgrounds on individuals themselves. These follow our regular guidelines for backgrounds, just like if we were running them for a potential employer. The simple online ones are cheap, and they are okay, sort of, but they lack in detail as well. They contain many errors as well as omissions, and the info provided is not verified. Professional license background checks are often required for pre-employment screenings as well. These are conducted to verify an applicant possesses valid licensing and permitting, as well to check the status of their license and any disciplinary actions taken on that license. Typically, a professional license can be verified by contacting your state's licensing authority. Here in Colorado, it is DORA, the Department of Regulatory Agencies. Next is criminal background checks. They are very common for private investigators to run them for their clients. Not only are they common, they are complex as well. Before I let you in on the biggest secret of all regarding criminal background checks, click that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for me. Here is top secret number 2 when it comes to running criminal or any background checks. There is no such thing as a national database accessible to PIs. Sure, there are data companies that say they have information from all 50 states, but what does that really mean? Well, what it means, folks, is that they have some data from some entities in most states. They may have information from a single county or a single city in a state, or they might have state police records in 3 counties and 6 cities in the state, but none of the data companies have every town, every city, every county, every court, and all of the records for all 50 states. In doing a thorough criminal background check, you need to check with every city, county, and state where the individual has lived or worked to include county court records, municipal court records, sex offender registries, as well as domestic watch list, and check for federal and state crimes as well. Now, most times, a private investigator will run a comp report on a database such as IRB, IDI, or TLO, and use that as a starting point to find out where the subject has lived and worked in the past, as well to find potential criminal history that needs to be verified off of those reports. Top secret number 3, IRB, TLO, IDI, or other database company comp reports are not all inclusive. They are comprehensive in the fact that they have a lot of data in them, but not necessarily everything on your subject. And here's top secret number 4. These comp reports are not for public dissemination. You should not run a comp report, add your company name to the top, and hand it over to your client. This violates all of the data company terms, services, and user license agreements. But that is a topic for another future video. How in-depth and detailed your criminal background check gets is usually going to be determined by your customer's budget. If they pay $75, you may only be able to put an hour or so into it, covering the most likely areas identified in the comp report. If the client is paying $250, then you can spend a good deal more time verifying the found data as well looking for new data. That brings us to number 10 on our list. But wait a minute. I have a bonus background check. I have bonus background checks number 11 and 12 right after we do number 10. Really quick, go down, hit that thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button. One of the most common types of background checks you may do besides a criminal background check as a PI is employment or pre-employment backgrounds. While this may be one of the most common types of background checks, it can also be one of those that can cause the most difficulties for a private investigator. Your comprehensive pre-employment background should include most of the elements that we have discussed up to this point. Typically, you will need the individual's first and last name, date of birth, current and past addresses, and social security number to run them. I also require my clients to have an ROI, a release of information form, filled out by the applicant or the employee for these types of backgrounds. A comprehensive pre-employment report and screening may include things such as credit history for specific job types, work history, driving record, criminal history, international background as needed, drug screening, education verification, professional license checks, and a social media investigation. Here are just some of the many caveats to running a pre-employment background check. It is illegal to run an employment background check based on an employee's race, national origin, color, sex, religion, disability, genetic information, or age. FCRA also requires employers to comply with certain regulations, such as they must have written permission and they must provide any negative information found that is used in the hiring decision. Employment background checks are very complicated and often done incorrectly. Not only do you risk legal action against your client if done improperly, you risk your own livelihood as a professional private investigator if done incorrectly. Bonus background check number 11 and 12 are volunteer background checks and rental or tenant background checks. When you are background checking for an organization that utilizes volunteers, you must keep one very important thing in mind. Volunteers are treated exactly the same as employees when it comes to FCRA and background requirements. Tenant and rental backgrounds are also much the same. They carry pretty much the same restrictions as employment backgrounds. Here is top secret number 5 for the day. Many background checks are regulated by FCRA rules, and they limit what information can be provided, how far back you can report information, including criminal history, and many other restrictive measures. Make sure you know the FCRA and your state laws when it comes to background checks, especially when it has anything to do with credit, housing, employment, to include volunteers. Now, I rarely do backgrounds that are restricted by FCRA except in certain circumstances with established clients. There are tons of online background sites out there. Again, they all have limited data. It is not verified. They make the user sign off on the fact that the data may not be accurate, and the user is solely responsible for the use of that data. I always refer FCRA regulated background checks to a local competent company that specializes in background checks. Now, here are a couple of other videos that you will want to watch. Hit that thumbs up and that subscribe button, and remember folks, stay safe out there.